Space burned. Not with fire in the way ancient poets had imagined, no roaring flames, no smoke choking the sky, but with light. Blinding, searing light. Habitat domes on Titan shone like shattered lanterns, reflecting the last moments of their people as their atmospheres boiled away into the void. Mining stations on Europa split apart, rupturing like overripe fruit as railgun slugs tore through their pressurized cores. Everywhere, alarms blared. Everywhere, silence followed. Captain Elena Ross had been staring at the same tactical display for over 3 hours, and it was only getting worse. Her command center on Earth Defense Network's Deep Space Hub was usually a place of calm precision, cool white lights, soft hum of quantum servers, the low murmur of voices. Tonight it was chaos. Analysts shouted over one another, comms officers cycled through emergency frequencies, and red warning glyphs bloomed across every display like an unstoppable plague. Captain, Titan Colony 9 reports critical atmospheric breach, one officer shouted from across the room. Before she could respond, another voice cut in. Luna's city just went dark. Nuclear signatures confirmed multiple detonations. Europa's habitats are venting, life support gone. We're losing contact with all personnel. Elena's throat tightened as she forced her hands to stay steady on the edge of the console. She zoomed out the system map, hoping against reason that this was some kind of isolated incident. But the tactical overlay told the truth. Enemy icons, cold, precise, triangular symbols representing Solari strike groups, had crossed the heliopause under stealth. They'd bypassed the outer patrol nets entirely, as if humanity's defenses didn't even exist. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to erase. Pull up civilian traffic, Elena ordered, her voice clipped. The screen shifted to show evacuation craft launching from dozens of colonies, each one desperate to outrun the onslaught. Too slow. The Solari ships moved like hunters, targeting the transports first. Dear God, whispered Major David Grant, her second in command, standing just behind her chair. His face was pale, the reflection of the red displays painting him in hellish light. Elena didn't answer. There was nothing to say. The next 10 minutes were worse. Emergency beacons screamed from Callisto. Phobos station reported incoming hostiles before their feed cut off in static. Mars itself went to full planetary defense alert, scrambling every defense drone and warship it had. Then came the moment that broke the room. A woman's voice, young, terrified, echoed over the comms, patched through from Titan Colony 9. This is Dock Supervisor Rena Hale. We can see them through the windows. There are children here, for God's sake. Somebody, please. Her voice dissolved into a sob, and then the transmission cut to silence. Elena felt the weight of every eye in the room turn toward her. Orders, Captain? David asked, his voice hoarse. She forced herself to breathe. Transmit immediate fleet recall. Every ship, every station, pull them back to Sol perimeter. Ma'am, with respect, David said, stepping closer, pulling back means abandoning the colonies. There are still people out there. Her jaw clenched. She didn't look at him when she answered. They're already dead, Major. Get that order out. News reached Earth in hours. The feeds filled with images that no one would ever forget. Domes shattered. Stations vented. Corpses drifting in the cold, lit only by the last flare of a burning reactor. The anger was instant. Crowds filled the streets of New York, Beijing, Nairobi, millions shouting at the sky, demanding retaliation. Candlelight vigils turned into riots, chants turned into fury. In Geneva, inside the reinforced halls of the World Assembly, President Nathaniel Cross stood before a silent chamber. He was an old soldier before he was a statesman, his hair silver, his posture straight as a blade. The Solari Empire has made its choice, he said, his voice carrying with grim weight across every live broadcast on Earth. They came without warning, without terms. They butchered our people. They sought to frighten us into submission. He paused, letting the silence hang like the edge of a sword. Instead, he said, his voice dropping to a cold whisper, they have awakened something they will never be able to put back to sleep. The days that followed blurred into one relentless storm. Shipyards on Mars and Earth shifted to full wartime production. Old warships, museums once, were recommissioned and towed into orbit for refit. Crews trained until their hands bled. In the halls of Seoul Defense Command, plans were drawn not merely for retaliation, but for annihilation. Humanity had been the newest member of the galactic community, polite, cautious, desperate not to make enemies. But that humanity had died with the colonies. Now the only question was how much firepower it would take to kill an empire. On the viewing platform of the orbital drydock above Mars, Elena stood with David, watching the construction of the EDF Retribution. The dreadnought's dark hull stretched for kilometers, bristling with weaponry that glowed faintly in the dock lights. "It's beautiful," David said quietly, awe in his tone. Elena's reflection in the glass looked tired, older somehow, but her eyes were steady. "It's not meant to be beautiful," she said. "It's meant to make them afraid." David glanced sideways at her. "Do you think we can actually win this?" "The Solari, they've ruled this part of space for centuries." Elena let the silence hang for a moment. Then she turned to him, her expression like carved stone. "They thought we'd surrender," she said. "They thought we'd bow." She looked back at the dreadnought, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. "They have no idea what they've just unleashed." And somewhere beyond the edge of human space, the Solari Empire continued its advance, unaware that the grief they had sown was already transforming into something far deadlier. Not fear. Not retreat. Rage. Humanity's quiet fire had been stoked into an inferno. And when it was unleashed, it would burn across the stars. 6 months later, the night sky over Earth glowed with fire. Not from war, but from industry. Every orbital shipyard around the planet burned with light as if Earth had forged its own constellation, each dockyard alive with the screams of plasma torches and the thunder of assembly drones. Freight carriers moved back and forth like clockwork, ferrying parts, weapons, and raw materials from Mars, the Belt, even what little remained of Titan. And in the center of it all hung the Black Armada. It was no longer just a fleet. It was a statement, a weapon sharpened for one singular purpose. Captain Elena Ross stood on the command deck of EDF Retribution, humanity's first dreadnought and now the flagship of the Armada. The deck was a cathedral of war, sweeping consoles, 3-story tall holodisplays, and reinforced observation windows that gave an uninterrupted view of the stars. The crew moved like clockwork, no wasted motion, no idle chatter. "All ships report ready status," said Major David Grant, standing just behind her. "Supplies loaded. Munitions green across the board. The fleet is waiting on your signal, Captain." Elena's eyes lingered on the planet below. Earth looked serene from up here, cloud systems curling like white paint across blue oceans, the lights of cities faint but visible. Somewhere down there were millions of faces looking up, watching the departure of the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. "This is what they wanted," Elena said quietly. David glanced at her. "You think they wanted this war?" "They wanted to end us," she said, her voice like steel. "Instead, they made us into this." She turned back to the holodisplay. "Transmit fleet orders. Destination, Solari border space. Formation Echo. Weapons free on contact." The comm officer hesitated just long enough for Elena to feel it. Then the command was sent. And for the first time in human history, an armada left Earth not to defend it, but to burn someone else's sky. Their first engagement came sooner than expected. Solari border space was thick with patrol routes, but the enemy was overconfident. A single squadron of 10 cruisers intercepted the Black Armada as it exited its final jump. Their transmissions were almost casual. "Human vessels, you are trespassing in Solari sovereign space. Power down your drives and prepare for inspection." Elena gave them 3 seconds to finish speaking before she turned to her gunnery officer. "Target the lead cruiser," she said coldly. "Main gun, full charge." The Retribution's railgun fired, its magnetic coil screaming with a sound that vibrated through the entire ship. A solid tungsten slug the size of a city bus crossed the void in a blink, impacting the Solari command cruiser amidships. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, torn into fragments that glowed red with kinetic heat. Fire control to fleet, Elena ordered. Execute pattern Omega. No survivors. The Black Armada descended on the remaining cruisers with terrifying precision. Plasma lances speared through shields. Missile barrages shredded engines. Boarding pods punched through hulls and vented what was left of their crews into space. When the battle was over, nothing remained but silence and drifting debris. Over the next month, the Armada pushed deeper into enemy space. One Solari colony after another fell under their guns. At Vorak Prime, the largest agricultural world in the sector, they didn't just destroy the orbital shipyards, they glassed entire continents, leaving the surface glowing with molten rivers of fused soil. The fleet's AI calculated civilian casualties automatically, displaying neat numbers on Elena's console. 2.4 billion confirmed. 5.1 billion probable. After the first week, Elena stopped reading them. But vengeance was not clean nor easy. The Solari began to fight back with increasing desperation. Every world the Armada struck seemed to draw more of their fleet to meet them. In the second month of the campaign, the Retribution took its first serious damage. 3 enemy cruisers rammed it simultaneously in a suicide strike, tearing deep gashes in its outer hull and nearly breaching the reactor core. Dozens of crew were lost. Elena stood in the damage bay afterward, watching the dead being zipped into silver body bags. "This is going to get worse," David said, standing at her side. "Yes," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "We could pull back," he suggested. "Regroup, wait for reinforcements." Elena turned to him sharply. "And give them time to rebuild?" "No. We press forward." David hesitated, then nodded, but there was a weight in his eyes that hadn't been there before. That night, alone in her quarters, Elena stared into the mirror above the small steel sink. Her reflection looked hollow-eyed, her face gaunt from months of tension and too little sleep. She touched the glass as though expecting it to feel warm, but it was cold. Images flashed behind her eyes, children on Titan, frozen in vacuum, their faces locked in terror. The sound of Rena Hale's final transmission, the sob that still woke Elena in her sleep. And then she saw the images from Vorak Prime. The burning cities. The melting fields. The lifeless oceans. Her stomach twisted, but not with regret. With resolve. She turned away from the mirror and opened a secure comm channel. "Fleet Command," she said. "Set course for their throne world." The comm officer on the other end hesitated. "Captain, that planet holds over 30 billion Solari civilians." Elena's jaw clenched. "So did ours," she said quietly. When she walked back onto the bridge, the crew fell silent. They knew what this order meant. David stepped close, speaking just low enough for her to hear. "If we do this, Elena, we stop being soldiers. We stop being defenders." "We already stopped being that the Night Titan died," she said. She looked out at the stars ahead, cold and unblinking. "Now," she whispered, "we're the fire." And the Black Armada turned its guns toward the beating heart of the Solari Empire. Every jump carried them closer, every engagement carving a path through fleets that grew larger and more desperate. The closer they came to the throne world, the more the Solari fought like animals backed into a corner. But the Armada did not stop. And behind them, the galaxy watched in silence as humanity marched, step by step, from tragedy into vengeance. Into something far more dangerous than war. The throne world filled the main viewport like an unblinking eye. Solara Prime, a lush world of sapphire oceans and emerald continents, had stood at the heart of the empire for millennia. Its cities were titanic, gleaming with crystal spires and orbital elevators that pierced the clouds. From this planet, emperors had ruled over 100 star systems. From this planet, the Order had gone out to annihilate humanity's colonies. Now, the Black Armada had come to answer. Captain Elena Ross stood at the center of the Retribution's bridge, her hands clasped behind her back, her posture as rigid as a drawn blade. The holodisplay showed the enemy fleet converging around the planet, hundreds of ships, more than they had ever faced at once. "Fleet count confirmed," said Major David Grant, voice grim. "At least 300 combat vessels. Dreadnoughts, carriers, heavy cruisers. More inbound from the outer system. Elena's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. Transmit to the Armada, weapons free. All ships to battle stations. Around them, alarms blared as the Retribution's massive guns came online, missile silos opening like the petals of a mechanical flower. Across the formation, Earth's destroyers, frigates, and carriers maneuvered into the perfect kill pattern they had drilled for months. The sky lit up. The first exchange of fire was blinding. Enemy lances cut through the void, striking Earth ships with white-hot precision. 2 frigates were vaporized in the opening salvo. But the Black Armada did not flinch. Main gun charged, called the gunnery officer. Target their command carrier, Elena ordered. The Retribution's spinal railgun thundered, the slug crossing space faster than thought. It tore through the enemy carrier like paper, detonating its reactor in a bloom of light that lit the entire hemisphere below. The bridge crew didn't cheer. They just loaded the next round. The battle became a storm. Missiles arced like fireflies. Plasma beams cut swaths through formations. Boarding torpedoes slammed into hulls and vented entire decks into the void. The Black Armada's losses mounted, but their formation held, punching deeper into the Solari defensive line with every minute. Elena stood in the center of it all, calm and relentless. Orders left her mouth like hammer blows. Destroyer Group Theta, flank left and cut off their retreat. Carrier Wing Sigma, full strike on those orbital gun platforms. Retribution main gun fire at will. Each order brought another enemy ship to ruin. Hours passed, though time became meaningless. The battle was no longer a clash, it was an execution. At last, the holodisplay shifted. The Solari fleet was breaking. Their dreadnoughts were retreating toward the planet, forming a defensive perimeter around the planetary shield generator, a massive structure pulsing with energy on Solara Prime's equator. They're falling back to shield coverage, David reported. Once they're under it, we can't touch them without dropping the barrier. Then we drop it, Elena said. David turned sharply to her. That shield protects the entire planet. 30 billion civilians live under it. If we breach it. Elena didn't let him finish. Her voice was cold enough to freeze steel. They shielded themselves while they burned our colonies. Target the generator. The bridge was silent for a heartbeat, the weight of her words sinking in. Then the gun crew acknowledged. Target locked. Main gun charging. The Retribution fired. The slug hit the shield at near relativistic speed, the impact flaring like a second sun over the planet. The shield held for 3 seconds. Then it shattered, collapsing in a brilliant cascade of energy that lit the night side of Solara Prime like day. Shields down, reported the tactical officer. Elena's gaze never left the viewport. Fire again. The second shot struck the planetary capital. The blast left a crater 50 kilometers wide where the Emperor's palace had stood. The shockwave flattened everything within 100 kilometers. After that, the battle was over. The Solari fleet dissolved, panic overtaking discipline. Ships fled in every direction, abandoning the planet to its fate. Earth's warships hunted them down one by one, reducing them to wreckage. By the end of the day, the skies over Solara Prime belonged to Earth. The planet burned for 3 days. Every major city was bombarded until nothing remained but smoldering ruins. The Armada dropped kinetic strikes on orbital elevators, industrial complexes, even the planet's primary spaceport hubs. The oceans boiled where the largest impacts struck. When it was done, the world was silent. Elena stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, staring down at what had once been the jewel of the Empire. The continents were scorched black, clouds thick with ash. Fires still glowed faintly on the night side, a web of red scars across the planet's surface. David joined her, his uniform streaked with soot, his face pale. The fleet reports the last enemy ships have surrendered, he said quietly. Elena didn't turn. And the civilians? David hesitated. Casualty estimates are total. Her eyes closed for a moment, but when she opened them again, there was no regret in them, only a terrible stillness. Transmit to Earth command, she said. Operation complete. The Empire is gone. The recall order came hours later. President Nathaniel Cross's voice was flat over the encrypted channel. Bring the Armada home. Leave nothing behind that could be rebuilt. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who seek humanity's extinction. Elena stood on the bridge as the fleet turned for its jump coordinates. The dead world of Solara Prime shrank slowly in the viewport. They thought fire would frighten us, she said softly, her voice carrying just enough for the bridge crew to hear. But they taught us how to burn. When the jump drive engaged, the stars stretched into white lines, and the Black Armada vanished into the dark. Behind them, the Solari Empire, an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries, ceased to exist. Ahead of them, humanity's future waited. No longer a backwater civilization. No longer prey. The galaxy would remember this day. Not because of the Solari, but because humanity had shown the stars what happened when you tried to erase them. And somewhere deep inside the retribution, in the silence of her quarters, Elena allowed herself the smallest whisper of truth, one she would never admit to anyone. They had won. But a part of her feared they had burned away something that could never be rebuilt.